What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we've got a few little updates from some stuff that happened on Twitter just the other day in regards to Marcus Lehto, who is the narrative game director on Battlefield, and he had some really positive things to say, all of which was very small, so just keep in mind this isn't any like breaking news or anything like that, but it was worth discussing. I know not all of you guys have Twitter, and even those of you guys who do have Twitter, you might not be following Marcus, so I wanted to just quickly discuss this with you guys and let you guys know what Marcus was saying. But like I said, there's not a heap to go through, so I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. Before we get into it, if you guys are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. There is going to be plenty more Battlefield 2042 content on the way in 2022, but with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. So firstly, for a bit of context on who Marcus Lehto is, I know a lot of you guys might not know who Marcus is. He is the narrative game director on Battlefield. He was just appointed in that role in, I think, December of last year, and for a bit of context on what he's done in the past, he is essentially the creator of Master Chief. As far as I know, he essentially designed Master Chief, and he designed a lot of the stuff in the early Halo games, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe he was also a producer on Halo 2 and 3, so not only did he design those characters, but he did produce a lot of those games as well, which is definitely not an easy role. So he definitely knows what he's doing, and obviously for anyone who's been around multiplayer shooters for a while, you'll all know that despite Halo having a rough couple of years in the last probably 5 or so years, the original games, especially Halo 2 and 3, are probably some of the best shooters ever made. So Marcus definitely knows what he's doing, and although he hasn't really had an impact on the Battlefield franchise just yet because he's only just been into the role, he is definitely someone that we want on our team. Now anyway, Marcus is relatively active on Twitter, and he had some really interesting stuff to say the other day, as well as some stuff from actually a few months ago that I'm going to go through as well in this video. Now, the tweet from the other day, he said, "Hey Battlefield friends, when I'm not reading forums about what is most important to you, I'm focusing my attention on building our new studio here in Seattle. We're slowly growing and getting things established." Now, for those who don't know what he means by that, when they announced that Marcus Lehto was essentially going to be involved with Battlefield, they also announced that he is actually setting up his own studio in Seattle that, as far as we know, is essentially going to be purely focused on Battlefield. I don't believe they're going to be working on any other games. They are essentially just going to be working on Battlefield, whether that's 2042 or games in the future, we're not sure yet, and we're also not too sure on the name of the studio just yet. So that is essentially what he is working on at the moment, getting that studio set up. Although, as he says in this tweet, he is actually paying a lot of attention to what we're saying on like Reddit and Twitter and stuff like that about what we, the Battlefield community, find to be important in the games. Now, before we get into the other stuff that he said recently, way back at the start of Feb, essentially 6 weeks ago now, he did tweet also saying, "Can't say much about what's happening, but can say that I'm glad to be working with lots of very talented devs at EA, DICE and Ripple Effect, as well as my new unnamed Seattle studio who genuinely care about Battlefield." So it's not something new that he's just started paying attention. He's pretty much been saying, and he said some other tweets that I haven't really found looking back because he does tweet quite a bit, but he has said a lot of like really positive stuff, not so much about Battlefield 2042 because there's not that much positive stuff to say, to be honest, but he has actually talked a bit about just like he is listening and he's paying attention to what we want and stuff like that. And even just for some context on the replies to that tweet, someone said, "Brother, run as fast as you can, no matter what they are paying you. They broke this one." And Marcus replied saying, "Nah, not yet. This franchise is amazing and has so much untapped potential." So it does seem like Marcus really genuinely believes in the Battlefield franchise, and he is one of the few developers on Twitter who are sort of saying these hard-hitting facts that yeah, the game isn't good right now, but he's essentially looking into why it isn't good and trying to fix that for future games. Now, heading back to the original tweet from just the other day, someone did reply saying, "Please make Battlefield gritty again, make it feel like you were part of a real war and make it believable." And Marcus replied to that saying, "I love all of those ingredients." Again, pointing back to Halo. Obviously, it's not super realistic because it is set in the future and stuff like that, but it is a pretty gritty game. The story and just like the tone of that game, it is pretty dark and pretty gruesome in a lot of ways, and I think bringing that sort of energy to Battlefield again, similar to what it had in Battlefield 3, 4, and 1, if anyone's going to do that, it's probably going to be Marcus Lehto, so I'm definitely excited to have him on board for pretty much exactly that reason. Now, something else that I thought was worth mentioning as well in terms of the replies to the tweets, someone said, "Out of interest, what are your thoughts about length of story-driven FPS games? As it seems ages since there was one with a decent length of time. They all seem to be 15 to 25 hours, which is not all that long. Is that something you would do differently?" Now, Marcus replied and said, "I love building campaigns, but admit that they are super challenging to do right and expensive to make." So I'm not too sure, I'm not going to look too far into that, but Marcus is almost hinting there a little bit that potentially the next game might not even have a campaign as well, which for me personally, I am completely fine with that. I'm fine with this game not having a campaign. We all like to shit on Battlefield 2042 for how rough it is. Imagine if they spent all that extra time and resources working on a campaign, and then the multiplayer would be even worse than it currently is. So for me personally, I am fine. I don't buy Battlefield for the campaign, and I'm completely fine with the next one having no campaign as well. I definitely wouldn't complain if they had one. It wouldn't be a bad thing in my opinion, but for me, Marcus hinting that, you know, they are super challenging to do and expensive to make, that kind of hints like that's not something we're really looking into. And so I thought that was worth sharing with you guys as well. Now, the reason I wanted to bring all of this to your attention is mostly because, like I said earlier, we don't really know what Marcus's job is just yet. Now, the easy guess would be that he's probably working on the story and the narrative behind the next Battlefield game, which is probably, you know, 2 to 3 years away from now. If I had to guess, that's probably what I would assume him and the Seattle team are going to be doing. However, they did bring him on during the lifespan of this game, and with a lot of content to come, obviously, they do still have to put out Season 1 through 4, and because of the fact that there is actually no campaign in this game, there is going to be some level of like storytelling in those seasons. A good example of what they could do is, for example, with Apex Legends, every time a new legend gets added, they essentially do a big trailer and a bit of like a lore behind that legend, and they kind of like weave the story into the actual multiplayer side of Apex Legends, and I do have a feeling that's what could be happening with 2042 as well. There is a good chance that with each new specialist, they kind of do a little bit of a trailer and they kind of tell the story through the content that they're adding rather than obviously having a campaign. And so although I'm not holding on too much hope for it, I do believe he's probably just working on the next game. There is a chance that he could be, you know, still involved with 2042 fairly heavily, and if he is, it feels like the future content could be a lot more like suited to the original story that we thought we were going to get, that more dark like World War III type of game rather than the like the Fortnite cartoony type of vibe that they're giving us at the moment. If he is working on this game alongside working on future content, then there is a chance that the upcoming maps and the upcoming specialists and stuff like that, they could be a lot more dark and a lot more suited to the sort of like the initial vision that we were given for this game. And so yeah, I thought that was worth bringing to your attention, guys. Like I said, there was nothing like crazy here, but it is always sort of worth covering what Marcus is tweeting about, because he is one of the few developers, not just from DICE, but from a lot of companies out there, who he really is just pretty honest. There was a tweet from a while back, and I'll try and find that for you guys, where he essentially agreed with someone replying to him saying like the game really isn't good right now and that it was really rough, and you know, they were asking him what's wrong with it, and he essentially replied saying like I've been brought in to try and figure that out. So he is very like hard hitting with his tweets, and I've really liked that about Marcus. I think that is the type of attitude that DICE is going to need, and if he's building his own studio, then obviously he's just going to hire and sort of lead his own team to be that same way. So I very much like Marcus Lehto's attitude towards all of this stuff, and like I said, whether it affects this game I'm not 100% sure, but at the very least we do know that he will be working on the future content in terms of like the next game and hopefully many games beyond that. And with Marcus in charge of like the story side of things, and then Vince Zampella in charge of essentially the entirety of Battlefield, he is the head of Battlefield, that's his official title. Those two are really good guys to have on our team, and I really do hope that they can sort of correct the course of Battlefield, because obviously right now it is definitely not looking too flash. But anyway guys, that is going to do it for this one. Like I said, there was not too much sort of like news or information to break here, but I thought it was worth discussing anyway. If you guys did enjoy this and you do want to see more, you know, discussion points around stuff that the developers are talking about on Twitter and stuff, definitely let me know down in the comments. A lot of the time I tend to just sort of not really bother, but then like for this video I kind of realized that not everyone has Twitter, and even those who do have Twitter, you guys might not be following all the developers. So if you do like this type of content, definitely let me know down in the comments, and if you guys are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. If you want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then do consider becoming a channel member. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.